Tony Knopp, how are you?
Nice to meet you.
And where are you from?
From Illinois,
Where?
East Central,
Oh.
near Champaign-Urbana.
Okay, I know where that is. Let me give you a brochure. These are outdated, but we're replacing them pretty soon, I think.
Yeah, that's what they told me 6 months ago.
Yeah, well, I met with the president at TSC just 2 days ago, so I think something may be happening.
Talking about our brochures here we were on to 6 months ago.
You can keep these on hand in case you need them here.
Gorgas. I want to hear about Gorgas. I don't know anything about. I know he's famous.
Okay.
That's all I know.
Let's see. I think to get underway here. Pardon?
Is this it?
Yeah. Let's go back this way. I need a place where I can roll out these maps for a minute.
Oh, good luck.
We'll find some place. Yeah, come on back.
I think it's covered, huh?
We can use the bar.
Good.
These are historical maps of Fort Brown, so I want to give you a little orientation of them. Let's see. This one, they're kind of cumbersome because they're so big. Let's start looking at it this way.
Okay.
Here's the Gulf of Mexico, and here's the Rio Grande. And you notice how it winds and winds and winds its way all the way over here. And you can see Fort Brown right there, and there's Matamoros. And this is from 1847, which is right in the middle of the U.S.-Mexico War. That's when this map was done. So you get kind of an idea of how far you'd have to come in by steamboat or other means to get up to what became Fort Brown. So that's just to give you a little orientation. And let me try this one. And turn it this way. And here you see a much closer view. This again was about the same time. Here's Fort Brown, and this is the image of it, basically. Notice it's like a six-pointed star, and it's right by the river and Resaca over here.
Let me see this part.
And here's Matamoros.
Casamata would have been somewhere here as well,
in
right?
this area.
Ah, really?
Like the Mexican side.
Sure.
So let me roll those two up, and we can show the third one, which is this is at the end of the Civil War, as I recall, and you get a better. Now it didn't look as neat as this, but at least you get the idea. And here would have been the river down here, and this part of the fort still remains. This part right here. You can barely make it out because it's not nearly as high as it was back then, but that's a portion of it.
Up from the ground is it?
It's probably about 3 feet.
3 feet.
Three, yeah. And
The golf course?
I had a hard time seeing any of it.
yeah, well, you have to.
Yeah.
You can
Is
see
it
it
right there by the cannon?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Well, you can see a hump there, and that's just it.
That's what it is. And you can see it better when they mow it, but they don't mow it very often.
The golf course.
Hang on a second. The golf course
Maybe over here.
is down here. Well, the driving range is here.
Okay, so the fort would have been at the very edge of the river.
Yep. And here you can see Matamoros, and here's Brownsville. By this time, there's already a Brownsville, and here's Fort Brown. See? Okay. So you've got a little bit of historical orientation that way.
Now, this then became the whole Fort Brown, right? Like, although this is the actual
Well, here, I can show you what I call the second Fort Brown,
There you go.
and that's this.
Okay.
And this is right by the so-called Gateway Bridge into Matamoros. That's where the second fort was established, a permanent fort with buildings and so on. The first fort was dirt.
When they did the World War I, they were training out of this area over here.
You bet. If I can get this.
And the second fort he's talking about where they built up, apparently during the Civil War, it got pretty well burnt.
Yeah, it was destroyed in effect.
And then after that, they rebuilt. Now, when they rebuilt, did the storm of 1867 tear it up again?
I'm sorry.
The hurricane of 1867?
Oh, yes. The hurricane of 1867 hit just as they were beginning to get underway with the third version of the fort.
Okay.
So all the buildings you're going to see are basically 1868, 69, and later. So post-Civil War, yeah, I'll let that roll up. And
First time he rolled those out, I thought I had the camera on. I
yeah,
wasn't recording. That's okay. I got enough of it.
glad anytime you want to do anything with them.
Press the button.
Yeah.
And so all this story that I'm going to be telling you about is pretty much in this brochure too, so you can reflect on it later if you feel like it. We're going to take my car and go over to the original fort first, because we got such a small group.
Yes.
Then we'll come back to the old buildings and we'll walk around them a bit.
Yes, I like that. Unless you all want to walk.
Well, I think
to run
I think Jesus could jog or something.
Actually, that's a pretty good walk.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It would be.
By afternoon.
It's closer than it really is.
Yeah, but it's probably a good mile.
Want to take some waters with you?
I'll take one.
Are you coming?
No.
No.
I have to run out of these and stuff.
Need a bottle of water or anything?
Take a bottle of water? Oh, wonderful. Thank
We
you.
may have to do some battle over there. So
Are you okay with
just
jumping over?
I'm fine, thanks.
Do we have our machetes?
You might need it. I'm in the Cadillac there, so.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
You managed to get that in there.
I will. I just need to run this down.
Sure.
When was this building built? This one, the Porfirio Diaz home.
The Porfirio Diaz home
There's a year there,
was,
1875.
yeah, it was
That's
built.
this
Mortar
building.
brick and all that.
It was built earlier, but this is not it. This is a newish building made to look historical. The Porfirio Diaz home, so-called, is long gone.
Was it here in 1875? Was that? You talk about Diaz coming here and was in a building that leaked, and then he
Yes.
went over. Did he go to the Stillman house or
Yes.
this one here?
Yes, he moved into the Stillman house.
I've been telling people he was in this building over here,
Which one?
the previous one to this.
Yeah, he was. When it leaked, then he moved into that one.
Because I was telling him that he come over here and then he stayed there for a short period of time and dealt with the council next door.
No, he moved into that.
And then I was reading just recently where I thought he's up here trying to get support, but they're saying that no, he was actually collecting arms for his
Both.
revolution.
Both, yeah. He was getting financial support from a lot of powerful people down here.
And I had told them, hopefully this is correct, that one of the conditions for support was to try to take care of Cortina.
Well, that was the result.
To manage him.
Yeah. That was certainly what they were pressing for, and it didn't even need to wait for Diaz to do it. Already, Lerdo de Tejada, the previous president, had collected Cortina and deposited him down in Mexico City.
Okay.
But Cortina decided he was going to support Diaz for the Diaz revolution. And so there was some question as to whether they would continue to hold him down in Mexico City.
When did Diaz go back to Mexico, or like
76.
1870?
Yeah, he took power in 76, right?
Yep.
He's in power for about 35, 36 years.
On Earth.
So that would have been after Benito Juarez.
Oh, yes.
Oh, he actually kicked them out, right?
No, Juarez died, and this Lerdo de Tejada took over.
That's when Diaz wanted to take over. What do you know about this solder? No, there were Ben Meeker, the green building upstairs.
Oh, yeah. I don't know anything about it, to be honest.
It's a solder house.
Hello?
93.
Hello, this is Sarah from Consumer Services. We're calling in reference to your current credit card account.
Oh, jeez. You're calling in about your credit card account.
The original Brownsville.
Don't worry, there's nothing wrong with it. We just want to sell you.
Call us right away.
Yeah, so we can sell you something.
Oh, really?
It's annoying
Better
that
yet, we can actually get your number.
Established, Brownsville Herald established 1876,
the Herald, 1892.
1892.
July 4th.
Yeah, that's right. The 4th of July.
4th of July. Yeah.
Okay.
They proudly display that on the front.
Come on.
And then Malfi was the editor of which newspaper?
That was earlier.
Or something like that.
Yeah, I can't remember which one.
Civil War, right?
Yeah, that was earlier, a lot earlier.
I think we have one booklet, the Maltby Brothers of the Civil War. There are three of
I
them.
didn't even know they'd done that book.
He was the editor of the Ranchero or something like that.
Yeah, there were three brothers. One was the Union, I think one was Union, one was Confederate, and the other was the newspaperman. Or there may be two Confederates. One of them was in, I think, Vicksburg.
From what I read is whoever was in power, everyone here went for.
There's a statue.
The guns.
Statue of an oblate priest. That's what that's about. The early missionaries here in the valley.
So this was the second Fort Brown. We're in the second Fort Brown.
Yeah, this has been the area right in here.
There's a picture right there.
Yeah.
And the existing buildings are
Over there.
back
To the
over
left.
there.
You see all those buildings, brick buildings? Those, this is the second Fort Brown.
And this is where the cemetery was originally?
Yep. The Fort
National
Brown Cemetery, National Cemetery, was here on this island.
Oh,
Now,
And here's the chancery of the Catholic Church.
did they move the graves?
all the
Yes.
graves? Yes.
Moved to Louisiana.
Moved to, oh my God.
Alexandria, Pineville,
Who were some of the people
Alexandria, okay.
soldiers.
Yeah, it was soldiers primarily.
Uh-huh.
They moved a couple
there? That would have
thousand.
been a great thing to see, right? Like who were the ones that gave their life?
But they have a memorial over at Pineville, Alexandria, Virginia, or Louisiana.
Louisiana, uh-huh.
I believe they list the names. They put them in like one big grave, didn't they?
Yeah, they didn't attempt to individualize the remains there. They were just all in one big.
And the reason they were moved?
They thought they were closing the fort permanently.
Ah,
Also, that's flooded, and
Well, yeah.
it flooded a lot, and they wanted to consolidate all the smaller cemeteries.
uh-huh.
So they
Well,
did
there were a
Fort
couple
Ringgold
little
at the same
ones.
time too, didn't they?
So
That I don't know.
Oh, Fort
think-
Ringo's also?
I think they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that cemetery up there.
Let's see what the Border Patrol thinks. By the way, we're passing in through the border wall right here.
Okay.
This is the border wall, and there's the border fence on campus.
And this is the no man's land.
Yeah.
The Wild West returns.
And this is what was the Fort Brown Golf Course.
Oh,
It's no longer functions as a golf course, however.
I see.
And usually we attract the attention of the Border Patrol at some point.
Ah, there he is down there on the end.
Yeah.
Actually, right down there about where the Border Patrol is, the cannon is just this side of it.
Oh,
In that thicket over there. Yeah.
Okay, at least you can see a memorial here to Yeah, they relocated this stone here from the 1936 centennial of Texas independence. They had it down there where the fort remains were, but they relocated it here when they put up this giant flagpole and these two markers provided by the descendants of Mexican War veterans.
So this fort was built 1848 also? They began building it?
46, yeah.
46?
Yeah. And I'm not sure you can...
New
yeah,
fort,
you have to turn a light on.
Right, it's hard to read.
the new fort was then built later on, right?
Down by after the war. Yeah, let's see. Fort Brown, Fort Taylor. They called it either Fort Taylor or Fort Texas. Renamed Fort Brown, May 17th, 1846. Honor Major Jacob Brown, who died here in its defense. It's a garrison by the blank infantry with companies, etc., etc. Original dimensions: 800 yards perimeter. So a football field and a half or two maybe. Perimeter, 6 bastion walls, 9.5 feet high, parapet 15 feet. In other words, they dug down and piled it up so it would be 9 feet high inside, but 16 feet outside in case anybody came to attack. And that was the point of the bastion walls. Came to points because you could go out into the point then and fire along the wall. Yeah. And
Cover all areas, get people in crossfire.
Right.
and Major Brown was, according to the representations I've seen, standing by a cannon in the fort when a cannon shot hit him in the leg, and he died from that a few days later. There were only 2 Americans that died at that time because, well, the story basically is that General Zachary Taylor brought U.S. forces down here under orders from President Polk to assert the American claim to the area between Corpus and what is now Brownsville, the Nueces River and here. But the Mexicans had at least as good a claim themselves. And the Americans got down here, and of course there was already Matamoros on the other side, had been there for almost 70 plus years. And so since they had a fort over there, they had cannon, it was decided to build a defensive perimeter here. But what do you build it with? Because there's very little stone, and the trees are not really suitable, so they dug up the dirt and piled it up to make the fort. And when the Mexicans then did come over, cavalry came over and attacked a small American party up the river a ways. then that's when the war was declared. And since the Mexicans had crossed once already, General Taylor was afraid that they would cross again with a larger force, and his supply line out to Port Isabel would be interrupted. So he took most of his force out there to protect his supply lines, leaving, I've seen different estimates, but 500 to 700 men here with Major Brown. And of course what happened is when most of them were gone, then the Mexicans did come over and surrounded the fort, and so it was under siege. And when the cannon attacks could be heard all the way out there, so that Taylor's scouts would pick up, and then he started back with his force, and that's where the battles of Palo Alto and Resaca de la Palma occurred, the first major battles of the war, in order to relieve Fort Brown, and that's what happened. Fort Brown was relieved, and about a week or so later, Matamoros was evacuated by the Mexicans, and the Americans came in and occupied it for the rest of the war.
I see. Okay. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
My mind wandered. Tell me again about how Fort Texas was relieved.
Yeah, when General Taylor's forces coming back from what is now Port Isabel fought battles at Palo Alto and Resaca de la Palma in order to relieve the fort, which was under siege by
that's
the Mexican
reason
forces.
why all that happened.
Yes, exactly.
They're on their way over here.
Yep.
Awesome.
I'm disappointed for us in that I don't think we're going to see the cannon. Let's see.
Is it behind the truck or?
Yeah, no.
No?
In front of the truck.
In front of the truck. Okay.
Which is on a levee road there.
Yeah.
Okay.
In front of that, coming towards us, do you see kind of a low rise there?
Yes.
Well, that's one of the walls.
You interested in walking down to it? There's a path here. We can get most of the way on a path.
If you want to walk, I'd be happy to walk. I don't know who wants to walk. I never push people.
I don't mind it.
Okay, we'll give it a whirl then.
And Juan was telling us there's a couple more people that want to come, so I told him we're down here, so I think they're come down to meet us down here.
Well, they showed up late.
Yep.
You have to do 10 push-ups.
Darn right.
Well, what we found is if you try to walk through the grass, it's kind of bad, but there's a sort of a pathway here. There's some blockages along the way, but it's not too bad.
This is the original golf course. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I should tell you, when they had the dedication of those two markers there and talk about the battle and the fort and all, and the flagpole, I was down here and they had I think it was a Hannah High School band was there to play, and so on. Here are the golfers. This was the first tee right over here, and the golfers were coming out and looking. There's the band's playing, and big celebration.
How about that?
Just make sure that this thing is on.
Okay.
I mean, I hate to.
I haven't touched it.
No, but okay, it's recording.
All right, very good.
Wiring. That's great.
30 minutes.
Okay.
Hey, look. Artifact.
Yeah.
We found something.
There are a couple places here where the trees are down. We have to kind of walk around it. But for the most part, it's
that's fine. This is fine.
Walking through the grass.
Oh, no kidding.
They had come down here with a little chainsaw and cut some of this stuff up.
That would be a nice gesture. Be a nice gesture if you did that. I don't know how much appreciation you'll ever get for it, but
Probably none.
very nice day.
It is. July and August for my kids.
Jeez. That's why I try to be out of town as much as I can. Then.
So we're not tempted? We're not tempted to Shanghai you?
And I'll be gone as much as I possibly can.
Yeah, this path here is a little bit less likely to run into snakes, too.
That's exactly right.
You know, all this time it tramps around in the cemeteries and stuff, I don't think I've run into the snakes.
No. Occasionally I'll have some in the water in my resaca.
Yeah.
Once in a while they'll get on the property, but pretty rare. Pretty rare.
No, I've got a resaca property.
Is that right?
Yeah. There's a big tree out on the resaca, right on the edge. He used to go out there. There's a big old water snake. He used to curl himself up on the roots.
Just in case you hadn't seen one of these before, this is a pata de vaca tree, cow's hoof. They call it because of the shape of the leaves on the tree. And it has a beautiful orchid-like flowers, which makes it very appealing.
Is it a tree or?
Yes, it's a tree. The way they've got it, it looks like a bush. But if they're done right, it's a tree.
And it's like so many trees down here, they will sprout anywhere along the limb and grow.
Yeah.
Not like the ones up north.
Yeah, right.
Well, let's see.
Go straight, and then we'll cut through the thicket.
Okay. Oh, I see. We've still got a turn here.
Let's pick it up here. We have to walk out around the town. Let's go and knock it off. This is actually better than trying to walk through the grass.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
What's the best way through here, Dave? That way or this way?
I think left.
Yeah, I think probably. This looks worse than
Hold on. Is this
That little
one of the
creek.
Dr. Knopp? Is this one of the walls here?
Pardon?
No.
Wait a minute. Yeah. But let me get in a better position to be oriented to it.
Well, if it is,
yes,
it would
it
be
is.
an outer. It would be a easterly wall. And towards the east. Kind of the east.
Sort of.
Because the cannon is
Yeah.
up here.
Yep.
And there's not much. This might have been what they used to water the lawn, water the golf course.
Oh, yeah.
Or it might have been a bunker, sand trap.
Water hazard, maybe. Now this is nice and clear up here.
I think these were the
Sand trap, bunkers, yeah.
looks like somebody might have sprayed some weed killer on this.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Because it's right at that place.
Someone had an idea to do a bird center here now. to turn it into a bird center.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be fine. Happy to have them do that.
And the structure's there.
Well,
Yeah, we could actually cut
Yeah.
across if you want.
yeah.
Okay, you want.
T.
Eric was telling me when he was golfing, they would come down here. When they had to take a leak, they're far enough away. They go into this thicket down here.
Yeah.
Well, just through this thicket is where the cannon is.
Pretty close.
Okay, well, we're still down here at the golf course, but we're all the way down by the cannon now. So basically, they just need to wait. Yep. Okay, this is a little rough here.
Yeah. A little tricky. Especially since it's mesquite and you've got prickles on it, so.
Okay.
Well, let's see if we can.
Maybe we did need the machete, huh?
Yeah, it looks like it. Some brand.
If there's a better way through, I don't think there is. That'll be something. I'll come down here with some snippers and cut that.
Oh, this is good. Very good. Watch your head in some of these places, like right here.
Actually, that one limb there broke off. It's not as not quite as hidden as what it was before.
Yeah.
But it's still somewhat hidden. And we have one of the plates that used to be on that back here in the Stillman house.
Oh.
Yeah.
On this particular one?
I don't know whether with this particular one, but they had a plate, a bronze plaque on these.
Yeah.
So we have a bronze plaque there at the museum.
Great.
All right, come on.
Okay, and this mound of dirt over here, this is what Dr. Knopp was saying, I think is what's left.
Oh, wow.
Pardon?
You know what?
This is what.
Yeah, that's the wall there.
I had never seen this right here.
Yeah.
This is the first time I see this. Wow, I would have never guessed it was a cannon.
Great.
Well, and from Google Maps, it's blocked by the trees.
Ah.
However, I did put a marker in Google Maps that shows the location of it. Because they had Fort Brown down there where the plaques were down there. Ah, here's Fort Brown. No, that wasn't Fort Brown.
Okay, let me give you a little orientation. This is one of the walls right there.
Okay.
And it opens out.
Brick walls?
No, dirt.
It
was all dirt.
Everything was dirt.
And it opened out into, this was one of the points.
Okay.
And that's the other wall there, going that way.
Oh, wow.
See?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you had 16-foot high dirt walls?
Well, from where they dug up, where they dug down, yes.
But then the
But
parapets
about
were like-
9.5,
9.5.
half from inside.
Whoa.
But there was no brick.
No,
No.
all dirt.
Rick probably didn't come into
What they
being.
call breastworks, right?
Yeah,
Earthenworks.
earthworks. That's,
Where they got, oh yeah, they dug from that side, right?
yeah, exactly.
just dug, yeah.
Exactly. So when
They
it's
basically did a moat on the outside to make it deeper.
yeah,
Right.
Where they had to have
Yep.
a longer climb. to
About
get up
20
there.
feet wide.
Those shovels were at work at that time.
The
Oh, yeah.
moat, like.
oh,
the
over
thing-
on
I
that
mean,
side of the wall. Yeah, I don't know. It's they dug down a ways. Probably would have
Just to
been.
use that dirt,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. When they mow this, it's you can see it a lot better.
yeah,
You can
sure.
identify it.
Actually, in the past, I've gone up on the path, but the border patrol don't like it doing that.
Oh, they don't want you on the levee?
No.
Is that what you
Is
said?
that federal property now or no? Or is it eminent domain?
This belongs to the International Boundary and Water Commission.
Ah.
And
And where do they belong to?
government, federal government.
U.S.
But it is in the possession of Texas Southmost College presently as a tenant in effect.
What can we do here with it? I mean, can we do anything?
Well, that's what the National Park Service is looking into, to turning this into the rest of the story of the beginning of the Mexican War with Palo Alto. Then we have Resaca de la Palma, and then here is the other part of the story.
He's off on somebody else.
Yeah, probably those people that are looking for us.
He's got a couple of illegals.
Oh, they got one over there, buddy.
Well,
Doesn't look like anybody showed up yet.
I'm going to walk it back this way.
Yeah, the grass doesn't look that bad.
No. If you can throw that stuff on the floor or something, it'll be all right.
Put it here between us. Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Great.
Oh,
I was telling her, Dr. Knopp, about the summit, the preservation summit.
yeah.
She was all happy about it.
Yeah, that was very, very neat.
I wish I had known. I would have loved to come.
Yeah, we were talking about the Neal House where they put it on the most endangered list to try to shame Brownsville.
Into restoring it.
Do you think there's going to be any sympathy?
Yes.
Yeah, I think there will be.
The thing is that there's a lot of private talk. There's not a public talk about it, but I think now it's a public thing.
Okay.
Yes, you're exactly right, Jesus. It's become a public concern.
I just read the closest city to us, which is where the University of Illinois is housed. A businessman just bought one of the mansions and is going to have it restored. And that's a win-win situation.
You bet.
A lot of
Well,
advertising.
that seems to be what happens down here.
Yeah.
You know, the individuals have been.
Right.
Boy, that new building is going up right by the fence, literally.
They'll have a gateway right there.
Now notice the name here, because it's something, River Levee.
River Levee.
So it would be bewildering to people.
Just past Ringgold.
I would never have known that was there.
And I just found out something. They had the barracks building that's right over here, somewhere off of Ringgold.
Oh,
That I don't think I've ever seen that listed. Watch out. I don't think I've ever seen that pointed out on the tours.
These are timeshares right here to your left.
Really?
Yeah.
How about that?
There's supposed to be a big building over here, a big long building that was like the old barracks building.
yeah, it was used by the police
Beautiful Resaca.
for a while, and I officed in one of those barracks buildings
Is
when
that
I
it,
first
the Calvary
came
building?
here. No, maybe they moved it now.
Accounting classes right there in that building.
This one here on,
this thing.
on the lighter, the cavalry building. Oh, great.
Okay, we're coming
Where
up
are
in
they?
that direction. We'll be there in just a few minutes. We'll be in that vicinity in just a few minutes.
We're in a black Cadillac.
All right.
This is one of the historic buildings. This building right behind you there is the cavalry building. It served as a quartermaster's depot at one point, and as, like I say, cavalry barracks is another. And
I think that's the one that I just saw that was physically located a little bit.
separately, yes, that
The rest
one.
of it, yeah.
It's the only one that's any real distance. Here, with this building, Rustenburg, is built, we believe, where General Taylor had his headquarters tent. Because the Fort Brown wasn't big enough, the building, the earthworks for it wasn't big enough for the whole army. So it was strictly a defensive kind of operation, that fort. So we believe Taylor was there. And notice how these newer buildings incorporate the features that you'll see in the historic buildings, the archways, the brick style, etc.
It won some awards for architecture.
Did it?
Okay, so we're supposed to have a couple people waiting on us over here by the mortuary.
Okay.
The historic part of here.
Yeah, you can tell them to get out.
They don't wander off.
Do you have to have a permit to park along here?
Yes, at least in theory.
Yes.
This is one of the few places that you can actually get into.
I figured he would.
Doesn't have a whole bunch of signs
Yeah.
saying we're going to tow you away.
Okay.
That'll look cool.
Oh.
I was so anxious to get out, forgot to unlock the seatbelt. Hello. Hi. Yes.
Yeah, you would have had a hard time finding us over at the other place.
Howdy.
Hi.
Oh, were you? Okay.
She's looking for a bathroom.
Is there a bathroom right here?
Let's see. Yeah, there will be, but I'm trying to think of where we can go. Let's try over here, ma'am. There were some bathrooms. Oh, here. Here's the men's room. Now the ladies must be on the other side, I hope. Oh yeah, right here.
Thank you.
There you go. Make sure it's open. Is it locked? Try the other one.
They're vacant, but they're both locked.
Oh, jeez. No, we can.
They want someplace else?
Yeah, I think so. Hi, how you doing?
Good.
Oh. Okay, we're going to go look at this building, and there should be one in here.
Oh, no. Okay. We should have asked that lady.
And Henry Field down here, he was a what they call a naturalist.
there a bathroom in there?
Yes, there is, but
Ma'am.
it's upstairs. I
Well,
don't think it's open
they
to the
claim that he
public.
was
Let me
rated
see.
to be
Let me ask. Let me find
related
out. Where's the
to
closest
Cyrus.
All right.
To relate the
Yeah.
transatlantic.
Oh my.
So Zachary Taylor came for some snacks in here,
Not exactly.
some grub. A commissary? Can you explain what a commissary is? I'm a little.
Yeah, that's where they pick up supplies that the soldiers might want to buy, razor blades, or that kind of thing.
It's like a general store.
Yeah.
In today's military for it would be a what do you call that?
PX,
A PX.
Yeah.
right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
Actually,
post exchange.
PX and commissary. Commissary now is like meats and things like that. PX is all the other.
All the other dry goods type stuff.
Jesus Christ.
Great.
Snacks.
Wrought iron.
My building that I have was originally built by Henry M. Field. That's why I did a little dig on Henry M. Field. It's misidentified from the 2000 survey because it has it one over, but it has the right address, 536 East 12. But that's why I know a little bit about Henry M. Field. Because he's the one that built it. He's also from the Fields Pacheco building.
Yeah.
But
I wouldn't do that.
Well, either they're going to let her in or they're not. In any case, let's the rest of us walk down to this table here where I can show you something.
this could be a. Okay.
So right down this way is where the library is at. That's where the
The
closest.
library. Too far.
Maybe in the gym. Maybe the rec center will be open as well. I'm sorry.
Anyway, god damn. Anal retentive people. Oh, he's going to try it that way?
They're looking for a restaurant.
Yeah, I know.
Only used 1 year.
Huh?
It said it was closed down in 1 year. Built in 04 and closed in 05. Is that marker right?
Well, let's see what they're saying on it.
Well, not this one, but the one up on the thing.
Oh,
The Texas.
05.
No, no,
That
see,
doesn't
that
make any
says, yeah.
sense. Yeah, that doesn't make any
Used to be,
sense.
It's contradictory.
You're gonna get them to go downtown and see all the history.
No, this is modern Mexican history is my topic this semester.
Modern Mexico.
From what era? Like current or? Like
From, well, modern, so it's from the Revolution for Independence.
Oh.
It's another course that deals with Indian civilizations and the colonial period and so on.
Wonderful.
Well, I think so, but the students show only moderate interest.
Yeah.
what's that military training in New York? I keep forgetting that name where all the military officers train for war.
West Point?
Yeah.
West Point. It's very big on the West Point studies, like the Mexican Revolution. I mean, obviously they study all wars,
Sure.
but it's one of the ones that they study. It's very
Well,
important.
one of the first graduating classes had all the lieutenants out of that class down here, Lee and Grant and Taylor, and I don't know, Taylor might have been a little bit older than that, but they had a lot of youngsters down here that kind of made a name for themselves and went on to become generals.
We have a place in, we stay 3 months in Port Isabel. We have a place on the Fingers.
Oh, yeah, good.
So
Nice.
I've really enjoyed.
Where was Baghdad?
Baghdad?
I heard it was a couple miles back.
What does that say? Burrita?
Burrito.
Yeah, that's Burrita Camp. Yeah, somewhere in this area.
Now, see, I thought it was more down towards the mouth, but I read somewhere where it was like 2 or 3 miles back.
Yeah.
And they show one of the maps showing there was like a little dry wash or something.
Here they come.
Anyway, there's nothing left of it.
One of the talks I went to said that this is really.
And there's a couple of hills here.
It shouldn't be valley. It should be
The delta.
delta.
Yep.
But
This
it
is a
sounds better to
delta.
say valley, doesn't it? Yeah.
That's how they sold land that way. Okay, you folks, it hasn't been long so far. I'm going to show you a few things off of historical maps here. This is a map from the actual reproduction of a map from 1847, which was in the middle of the war between the U.S. and Mexico. And what's showing you here is the Rio Grande. This is the Mexican side. Here's the Rio Grande. Notice how it wobbles around. It gets up here, and here's where Fort Brown was. The first dirt fort was built.
Okay.
Right here. And it shows on this side Fort Paredes, the fort the Mexicans had, and here's Matamoros. So that gives you a little bit of an orientation. We'll roll that one up.
I've heard it claimed that it's 20 miles or so, 25 miles to the coast by road.
And a lot more by
50 miles by road.
let's see if I want to show you this one, I think. This is also a Mexican War era map. And it gives you a little better definition of Fort Brown. This is what we were at over there, what we could still see. And what we can still see there is this little part of the fort right here. A couple walls and one of these bastion points. So you have a 6-pointed star. That was Fort Brown, built of dirt. They dug down in front and piled up the dirt, and that made the walls.
Wow.
And here you can see the city of Matamoros over here. Back then, Matamoros did not reach the river. Now it reaches the river, but back then, no. And here's the fort that the Mexicans had at that time, Fort Paredes.
Wasn't very far
This
away.
is not safe.
See, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that
Never
either.
knew before.
This is Riverside in Brownsville, right?
Yeah.
So right across Riverside.
So, yeah, here you see the fort, and you get a little bit of an orientation. Here's the same curve of the river you have today, etc. And then you come down this way to downtown Matamoros and the plaza and the church.
Dr. Knopp, I've read in William Neal's papers, they talking about the fort that's up here was, they didn't know where that, supposedly didn't know where that fort was in the beginning. It was down in a swampy area. So they were out scouting around trying to figure out where it was.
No doubt.
How about that?
Okay, so let's look at this last one. This map is from the end of the Civil War era, and you get another look at Fort Brown and what it would have looked like. Here's the river. Here's the part of the fort that still exists. But while the walls are like 9.5 feet tall, now they're like about 3 feet. So, and there's a cannon here, and I didn't tell you other folks about the cannon. There's a cannon that stands straight up. And one of the stories is that that's in recognition of a commander that falls in battle, because Major Jacob Brown was mortally wounded in the Mexican cannonading of the fort. And so General Gallopin Jim Parker put up this cannon in 1917 in honor of Major Brown.
Oh, well, I wondered why it was upright.
Yep.
So that 3-foot wall wouldn't meet Trump's
What's
wall.
a smoker then?
No, that's not part of Trump's law. This is a nice, very much nicer appearing fort than the way it actually looked, of course, because it was all dirt. And over here, you see, here's Brownsville, already this much developed by the time of the Civil War. Here's the original dirt Fort Brown, and after the end of the war, they built another fort here. But that fort was destroyed during the Civil War, and that's why the buildings you're looking at now are all after the Civil War. Not much after, Most of them were built in the late 1860s, but after.
Let me see this. Where was the Fort Paredes over here?
Up on here, it's off the map, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't. No, that's
No, no.
that's Fort Brown.
It would be
Over
up
there
in
by
the-
Riverside.
No, over in this area. Yeah, this area.
And what is this again?
This is Brownsville, and here is Matamoros. So you can see that.
Today,
Is that still there?
Garcias are setting about right there.
Yeah, that's well right. That's right.
Is that right? That's a good shop and restaurant.
Oh, good shop restaurant. Okay.
Is the restaurant open again?
Oh, it's always.
Always been?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you can walk over there easily. It's no
I've been there once.
problem at all.
Put it together?
Yeah, just put it together somehow. Wrap together. So I wanted you to have a chance. That way you kind of catch up on what the story is. The fort exists because the Mexican-American War began here. And this was the defensive fort that Zachary Taylor had built when he came down here from Corpus and to assert the American claim to the territory between the Nueces and the Rio Grande. So let's take a look at the historic buildings that still exist. And this one is actually a 20th century building, 1904 or 5, and it was the guardhouse and commissary. And the guardhouse, of course, because this was a fort, and they had the quartermaster's fence out where the main street is out there, International Boulevard. And so they would mount the guard from here every day. The officer of the day would come here, the sergeant of the guard, and they'd send out the guards to the various locations where people entered the fort to protect it. What's interesting is there is a kind of semi-basement there. I call it a basement. On this building, it's the only one that has one. And because this was the guardhouse, they had cells down there for locking people up, and some of the cells are still there. They're made of not of bars, but of strap metal, but they still exist down in that basement area. This building was the bachelor non-commissioned officers' quarters, and then also served as a telephone exchange when they finally got telephones. When I came here, the two buildings were in effect joined together. They put something in the middle so that they could utilize the space more, but fortunately they returned it to its authentic historical appearance.
First guy here, I used the telephone.
Don't put me back that far, Jesus. This all belongs to the college, Texas Southmost College. We'll come back to that. Let's go over here. And I want you to look at this building and notice it seems to have been built at different times and by different people, and it was, as a matter of fact. The early buildings in the 1860s, 70s included the linen storage area. That's the building on the left with the what we call dentated brick, look like teeth. And the tall one there, just that portion, that was the morgue. The other two sections were added in probably in the late 1930s, maybe even as late as 1940. I know the one on the end was a garage for an ambulance. I don't recall what they had in the middle there. But come over here a little bit and look, and you can see part of the problem of upkeep of these buildings. What they used to do is sandblast these buildings in order to clean them because they get dirty.
Right.
But the sandblasting destroyed the surface of them.
Yeah, look how
And you can see where it needs pointing here badly. They use hydrofluoric acid now to clean these buildings, and it doesn't destroy the brick. Doesn't clean as well, but it doesn't destroy the brick. Now you see an archway down here, and I've noticed in several other places when we were walking along over there. And people think, and I thought, well, maybe they had a window down there or something. No, this is support. The way they put the brick in there served as support for the walls of the building.
How about that?
Okay. This brick would have come from the river back in, what was this built?
Oh yeah, these were locally made bricks, surely.
Where was the original building? That middle building?
The which?
The original building, the morgue, the original morgue.
Oh, the tall one back there.
Around what
No, when was it done?
Yes.
Probably about 1869. It was built in relationship to the hospital, which we'll talk about in a minute. 1880s, about 1882, I guess, 81, 82. There was another one of those, what would you call it, yellow fever epidemics. And they came through fairly regularly, that and other things. You know, I've been here over 40 years, and I've had typhoid and, you know, so other things. We used to have leprosy here in the valley, as a matter of fact. At any rate, during one of the yellow fever epidemics, early 1880s, they brought down a young officer, medical doctor here, and told him stay out of the wards because they thought you could catch it in the wards. But he went in anyway and caught it and survived. A lot of people didn't survive. And he managed to get back in the good graces of his commanding officer when the commanding officer's sister-in-law came down with yellow fever, and the doctor helped restore her to health, and then they got married. And because they had both had it and survived it, they could never get it again. So Dr. William Gorgas went on to play a major role in the uncovering, along with Walter Reed and I think of the name right now, the cause of yellow fever and malaria, etc. And then he was able to utilize what he knew to make possible the building of the Panama Canal. So, very famous story.
Nice sheet here.
Huh?
Nice sheet here.
Yeah, it sure is. It can be risky, you know.
Yeah.
You'll notice that how this building, which is the post hospital, how it's constructed architecturally to accommodate the environment. Notice the archways, notice the open galleries, and intersected with other open galleries, and the windows. The idea, we're building them that tall, is that you would, and you folks know this, but a lot of young kids don't know it, that you open at the top and at the bottom, and then the cool air would come in the bottom and the hot air would go out the top. It's not the most efficient system, but it does help somewhat. When they were restoring the interior of this room here, as a matter of fact, they discovered a couple fireplaces, which in a hospital you would need in the winter here. Yeah. This was the college president's office, but I was in there yesterday and meeting with the TSC president, and it's now a conference room, so I think he's upstairs again, where the president used to be. I have an office up there, but this is administrative offices for the college.
Where was Mr. Borges's office?
I don't think he had an office. He worked in the hospital.
Okay.
But I'll show you where he did do some work. This is the commanding officer's home. It's been relocated. There used to be, where that big building is now, there used to be 3 of them there facing the parade ground, which is right over there.
Parking lot area?
Yeah.
Medium in there. Okay.
That's where the parade ground was. And these were facing them. Their back was to the Resaca. And when they decided to build that building, they started looking at the plans and thought, oh, the footprint for this new building is right on top of that building. So they decided to relocate the building. I don't like that, but at least they preserved it and restored it to its late 19th century appearance. Those of you who have the... Pardon?
One person lived there? Just one person?
Just one family.
One family.
Yeah. Now, some of the other buildings, officers' quarters, may have been shared, but this one was the commanding officer.
Pretty nice.
And those of you who got a brochure, if you look on the front cover of it, you'll see that what's called the commanding officer's home looks entirely different from this.
Oh, yeah.
And those of you who did not get a brochure, you can get them back at the...
Okay.
Which one is it?
No,
Here on the
flip
other
it.
side.
On the front.
Okay.
Oh,
There it is.
yeah.
Completely different, right?
Who was the person that was there? Like, do you know the name of the commander?
Oh, it had several commanders. The whole
Whoever was in charge
number
at
of
the
them.
time?
Abner Doubleday, supposedly the founder of baseball, was a commander here at one point. Let's see what else. Oh, yeah. This also served as the college president's home until Dr. Juliet Garcia became president, and she didn't want to live there, so they started to turn it into offices, and in the process, while they were just kind of getting underway with that, a new dean of adult and continuing education came down here, was hired, and he wasn't having any family with them, and they said, well, you want to stay here, we've still got bedrooms and bathrooms in this house, so, you want to stay there, fine. And after a couple of weeks, he came to us and said, what's that sound of drilling? Marching and clop, 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 clop. And we had to tell him there aren't any military units here.
Okay.
So, what was it? Well, being a cynic, I have an answer for that. Across the river in Matamoros is a naval station by the river. So it's just a few blocks away from here. What they could have been hearing is the Mexican naval personnel drilling, or maybe not.
Oh, you ruined their mystique, didn't
Well,
you?
could have been, or maybe not.
So is it empty now?
No, there's some administrator in there right now. So they've had administrators in there ever since they finished it. Let's go over this
Doesn't
way
exactly fit the scheme of the architecture.
of the brick buildings. When I got here, there were a whole bunch of these wood houses, however, of officers' quarters. So to me, it's not so. Pardon?
Was the auditorium here when you got here?
Jacob Brown?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that goes back to the 50s.
Oh, okay. So you weren't here to actually see the parade ground?
Not as such, no. No. Now this is your best view, I think, of the hospital building, because they put some live oak trees in the way and it's kind of hard to see it from right in front. It's considered perhaps the best example of frontier fort architecture, this building. And of course it was the only hospital in Brownsville until about 1928, I think, when Mercy Hospital was established. So while it was primarily for the fort, you know, it could serve for emergency purposes for local people as well. Let's move over this way. You see where the parking lot is there? That would have been parade ground area right there. And on the other side, up against that road there, International Boulevard, that's where they had the barracks for the troops that were here, many of them, for the infantry troops. Cavalry were in other places. They even had an artillery unit here at one time. So.
Was that a church that was surrounded then?
Pardon?
Is that a church with a...
No, that's our bus terminal.
It's your bus terminal.
Yep, right there.
Actually, they just repaired it. Yeah, it's fiberglass. You wouldn't think it'd burn, but somehow they got an electric problem in the top, burned a big hole in it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, there's nothing up there. How can you burn the thing out?
If I go over to the flagpole, there's a marker there, and then you'll start reading it. So let me just tell you about it. That way you won't be trying to read while I'm talking. That's from the Texas National Guard outfit that was mobilized for World War II and was the last military unit here at Fort Brown. They were a cavalry outfit. And at the time when Patton was going into France with tanks, these guys were still riding horses. As a matter of fact, there was a cavalry unit up in Laredo, too, at the Fort McIntosh there, and occasionally our guys would ride up that way and their guys would ride down on horses and have maneuvers, etc. And ultimately in 1944, they were sent off to Burma because they needed people who could work animals. So it turned out they had fortuitous training. It wasn't all wasted on. And they came back, many of them came back because they were from Texas originally, and some of them were settled here. I knew a couple of them.
Really?
And they would hold their reunions over at the Fort Brown Motor Hotel, which was right over here on the Resaca.
Where the old cemetery was.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
They even had the cavalry room at the Fort Brown Motor Hotel in honor of those guys. And
Later on, that became the Holiday Inn for a while.
yeah,
Was
it
it?
changed names.
How about that?
Some of those guys were recruited by the Mexican government to go up into the hills and mountain areas in Mexico to shoot cattle that had hoof and mouth disease,
Oh, wow.
because they had to kill them. And the locals did not appreciate that at all. You know,
Yeah.
they didn't understand what was going on, so they encountered some difficulties. But that was one way of making some money out of something you had learned how to do.
Wow.
Pardon?
Is there a college here?
College?
Is there a college here?
Oh yes. Oh yeah. Where's this? All of this, these buildings are part of Texas Southmost College.
Someone asked the student body size.
Yeah.
About 5,500.
For college?
Yeah, just for the college.
Just for the college. Then you have the university.
Now, here you have a kind of an add-on building, as you can see here, and I know that at various times, you know, these buildings are so old, they serve multiple purposes. The dentist's office was in there, they performed operations in there, you know, various kinds of medical activities were involved. Oh, I think that we're going to talk about the chimes. This clock is off one of the bank buildings downtown.
Wow.
So from way back, I don't know if it was a First National Bank or Mercantile Bank. I'm just not sure.
Wonderful that they preserved it.
Yes, indeed. And this is Mountain Laurel that has come out just in your honor. It's usually only out for about a few weeks. And about this time of year, it has a wonderful smell to it, but usually the wind's blowing and you can't pick it up very well.
What is this?
Mountain Laurel.
I saw some at the Texas Info Center in Harlingen.
Okay.
Don't make that assumption.
Well, this is a building that was relocated. It was originally down where the customs area is for people crossing the bridge, trucks and so on. They'd have them swing back into a area to be checked. And when they expanded that area, this was in the way. So they took it down. And then, you know how politicians are, it took a year for the college to decide they wanted it. But they had all the stuff, so they put it back up, in essence.
Yeah.
This building dates back to the 1870s, we believe. And it served as, let's see, a place where black soldiers learned to read and write after the Civil War because they had been slaves and weren't educated. It also served as the chapel for the post at one time. It served as the post office, and it was the first home as a museum of the Brownsville Historical Association. They had it for, I don't know.
At this location?
No, at the other location. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Ever since it's been relocated, it served as offices for Texas Southmost College.
We're talking about the railroad bridge, right? Or we're talking about
No,
No, the
no.
Customs Bridge.
The
Gateway?
Gateway.
I was there.
Gateway. Because it was down by where the headquarters building was. Just if you continued along Elizabeth Street into the fort, that's where it would have been, in that general area. It reminds me of another house here at Fort Brown. The one, it was a house in the 1850s, the Fort Brown version. The wife of the first quartermaster down here came down to Brownsville. Well, actually, she came down to, what would you call it? What we call Boca Chica Beach area. And finally they moved her in. This was during the Mexican-American War, and the U.S. occupied Matamoros, so they put her up in somebody's house down on the plaza in Matamoros. Just told some lady, there's a gringa moving in with you, and in she went, and apparently they got along just fine. But she wrote back letters back home. And one of her descendants collected those letters and edited them and turned out a book called The News from Brownsville. And in it she talks about her home being built over here. More than one report of, oh, my house is underway, and oh, we're getting close, and I can get into my house finally. And finally she did, along with her husband. And Captain so-and-so and Lieutenant so-and-so and another Lieutenant so-and-so. More a boarding house than her home because, after all, where were people going to stay? There were hardly any buildings.
Put them in a tent.
Yeah, well, that was the idea, to get out of the tents. So, yeah, that was...
But it is the news from
Brownsville. Yeah.
Was she the same one that wrote the letters about when she landed down at the mouth of the river about it being a wasteland?
Yeah, well, it was.
Yeah.
Certainly. But that's why I think of her when I think of this house, because it served as a home for the chaplain at one time, but it also served many other purposes as well. So, any questions anybody has?
Yeah, I noticed the other side, the marker says the post chapel.
Yeah.
So that answered a question I had for you.
Several
Functional purposes. Right.
Well, those of you who weren't with us at the beginning, if you stop back at the Heritage Museum, they'll give you a copy of that brochure that gives you the whole history of Fort Brown and describes it all, etc. So, well, that's. I left about seven copies.
I want to grab one of those and make copies of it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Try to anyway.
Great. So, are you you go over to Matamoros yourself?
Yeah.
You're not frightened of it?
Well, I exercise some caution. I don't like to go over there at night, for example.
Yeah.
I'll go over to Garcia's in the evening.
Yeah, there shouldn't be any real problem going to Garcia.
And the Santa Fe. The Santa Fe is a Chinese restaurant, but it has other kinds of food, and it's right there.
Where's it located?
It's right behind Garcia's.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
It's on the on Primera what? Uno?
Well, it's
You kind of go
between
through
the two.
Garcia's to the next road?
Yeah.
Yeah, the backside.
It's not like
Yeah.
Progresso.
No.
Progresso, it's really,
Hey, Garcia's is about it, and then you have a
Yeah.
bunch of pharmacies and bars.
Yeah. I have no hesitancy about going over to Garcia's or the Santa Fe, and during the day I'll go over to other places in Matamoros.
we're through several places in Donna and around McAllen, and they say don't use Matamoros, or they have one in McAllen.
Well, what they ought to be telling you is don't use Reynosa.
Yeah.
Reynosa is where the trouble is now, not so much
Now
Matamoros.
you go to Progresso, you go over the group.
Oh, yeah.
back with the group.
Progresso is fine.
This tourist.
Because you're there, and
Progresso.
it's Dennis Farms, all up and down the whole.
Oh yeah, I know. It's just, and
It's
Tourist
it's a
shops.
great place, yeah.
It's
Yeah, it
just
is.
Whereas here it's not so much.
yeah, we still have a bunch of people who will go across for dental work over in Matamoros, but it's not a comfortable feeling any longer, except as I say, right there at Garcia's and the Santa Fe.
Well,
So,
you know, it's a different country, but when you get over there, it looks like a different country.
yeah, it is.
You
It
go
is-
over it and
Well, I used to work over there, and it's amazing some of the stuff you see.
We'll be leaving for Puerto Vallarta in about 2 weeks, my wife and I. So we go down there almost every year.
wonderful.
Okay, folks,
I got
Glad
this
you
one
came.
Back over.
you want to ride? You're going to walk for the exercise? You want us to take that?
Yeah, I'll take it.
All right. Okay.
Where is the can in the old Ford at, just so we have an idea?
When you're, this is so challenging to talk about since they closed the golf course, the parking lot, and right in front of the parking lot is what used to be the driving range. As a matter of fact, you can still see signs, 100, 200, right straight down there. But it's very difficult to see it because they don't cut the brush anymore and they don't cut the grass.
So which direction, this way?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I can show you, give you an idea of what
This way, that way.
If you go out of this parking lot, left
Okay,
that way,
okay.
and at the end where you run into basically kind of a dead end, you turn right, and you come to within a block, you come to a semaphore, light change.
Oh, okay, right.
Go left there,
Okay.
and the first thing you see, road going off to the right, called the River Levee. It says a
Okay.
sign says River Levee,
Okay, we find
and
her
that
on
will
the way.
take you. It's a little bewildering.
Go over the levee.
Matter of fact, if you'll follow me, I'll take you over there.
Okay, all right.
Follow me.
That way we won't get lost.
Yeah. Okay, Jesus. See you later. Okay. Okay. The black Cadillac, yeah.
Before I forget it, you grab that. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Very interesting.